Hi, and welcome back to Project Stargate. We're here with Denise Stoner, and today we're doing Denise Stoner, and she's telling us all about her research and her experiences with MUFON, but she has some more information to share with us. Denise, what do you have for us today?
Well, I since we were speaking about orbs and where they come from and where they don't, and how to look for the various telltale signs, there are some other things and some other issues that people have brought up, and I'm going to touch briefly on those so people know what to do. Um, I have a lot of calls saying, I think I saw a shadow person. What is that? And it's usually a man, or appears to be a man, because it's just a dark shadow. Sometimes wearing a hat, so they're assuming he's from a time when we were not here, many moons ago. And they drift very quickly across the back wall, across a doorway. And a person can say, I wonder if that's an old relative, but it's not, because they feel uncomfortable. I don't accept the sightings of shadow men. They're neither spirits or ETs. There's something, I'm not going to call that demonic, but it's negative. There's the in between negative force that just gets a hold of something, usually just in a home, to see how they're going to affect an individual. And those should be and can be ignored. And I'm going to put those together with a poltergeist, bouncing things off the wall, turning on the water, turning the door handles, and opening and closing doors where you never see anything. You never see a spirit. You've only got a lot of movement and noise. It's hard, but completely ignore it. If you know that that home that you're in has not been haunted in the past, you've got poltergeist activity, ignore it. They're liable to ramp up and have a temper tantrum and be worse until it stops.
They're attention seekers, in other words.
They are attention seekers, and they are run by anxious individuals, teenagers for sure. Sometimes, a lot of the time, if the teenager leaves the house, there's no activity. So we have to take a look at all of these types of things. I mean, there's so much more, but this is the way you can test. Um, Now, if you go out to a flea market, to whatever, and I'll tell you the story about mine, um, and you purchase an item and you don't know where it came from, you don't know the background, you could be bringing a little something, something into your home. And it is, in fact, a spirit um, that has attached itself to that object.
Like a divot
So,
box.
oh, the divot box is, yeah, those are so bad. Those are actually evil, absolutely evil. So, my husband and I went to a Sam's Wholesale Club and we purchased a dining room table. We both fell in love with it, really liked it, and purchased it, brought it home. And it wasn't too long after that that we began to find things missing that were of importance, documents to be mailed, little pieces of jewelry. If I left my earrings there, found them missing. So I checked to see exactly what we had as far as the purchase itself. We had bought a beautiful piece of Caribbean hardwood from the islands. There had probably been a plantation there where the wood was cut, and it stemmed back eons through a family who were now gone. And something happened because whether it was the ending of the plantation, or maybe it burned down, don't know that. Um, but we brought a woman with us. on that table. We just called her the lady of the table. I
That's
s-
very appropriate.
she was very elegant, always wore kind of a white gauzy dress, and she would walk from our front door to the table and back again, and that crossed our bedroom door. So I was sitting up in bed reading, and I saw her walk by, and that's how I discovered who she was. So the table is no longer. We actually gifted it to a young gal who had just purchased a home and had no furniture.
That was very thoughtful of you guys.
So she has the table, perhaps the lady, and all the chairs to go with it. And we have not seen her had anything go on since then. Now we did purchase a bedroom set, dresser, a couple of other pieces. No, nothing. So you have to really beware of what you bring into your home. It can be so simple. Here's a new piece of furniture, and it had something from the land it was born and grown on. And so that's one thing you need to look out for. Another thing is simply a repeat of an incident that occurs on the land or in the home or both that someone purchases. It has nothing to do with spirit. It doesn't need your energy or anything else to run because it's like a film and it runs over and over and over. If someone was a soldier marching on the castle wall and he dies from some strong or unseen force, that film of that energy may run until the castle is no more.
You mind if I interject real one just for a quick moment here?
Sure.
I was actually, it's interesting you brought this up, and the reason I say that is I was having a discussion last night with my father, and he was just kind of asking me a little bit about my research, and we were talking about you and Dr. Taff and a couple of the people that I've gotten to know a little
Mhm.
bit, and
Uh-huh.
one thing that I've seen, it seems that when people there's this preconceived notion that all hauntings are a spirit, which is not the
Right.
case.
No.
I think that what I think happens in some cases,
Mhm.
I might be going out on a little bit of a limb here, but I think that some cases that there's no spirit whatsoever, that some of these hauntings are in fact nothing more than an imprint in either matter or time and space. And
Yes.
because there's no rhyme or reason behind it. It's like you're seeing the same thing repetitively over and over
Yeah.
and over again. Would
Oh,
that be
yeah.
fair to say?
That's so fair. That's perfect. And if you attempted to get their attention, you won't be able to because it's not a spirit. It's not an entity of any kind, and they don't realize you're there. It's just a film repeating what occurred. Um, if you walk into a place and you are sensitive at all and you begin to feel uncomfortable, you shouldn't be there and that you need to get out, follow your gut instincts, get out.
Yes, ma'am.
um, be,
Absolutely.
okay, good. You agree on that one because you don't know what's coming next. Probably not going to be good. Um, and you don't need to find out unless you are highly trained. And if someone says, well, I've got someone here and I think that they are possessed and I need you to do, and you think you are the perfect person to do that, don't ever, ever, ever read the rites of exorcism as a layperson. Never do it. You are going to get in big trouble. Um, I'm taking a course under a bishop, and he is one of very few approved exorcists in our country. And he will guarantee what I said is the truth. You have to be a trained shaman, a priest, someone who has had long term work in this arena.
Yes, there's a group local out of here, and they have a very experienced non-denominational minister, and they have a Native
Hmm.
American, they have a nurse, and a retired police officer. and they specialize in deliverances, which is the same thing. It's just
Right.
done a little
It
bit
is.
differently.
It
And
is.
someone like what you're describing, or someone like these people would be the people I would call if I was investigating something
Mhm.
and I felt like I was in over my head with something diabolical.
Yes, absolutely. Um, so you've got something like that going on. What you said is fact. You get someone or find someone who can help you. I have a list of clerical paranormal researchers that I can call for someone. If it doesn't quite sound that diabolical, good word, then I can give them some advice. People are resistant to check and research where did their property come from, or how did it grow and develop? What was there prior to this home being built, or perhaps both at the same time? Who passed away in the home? How do you do that? You can go to the library, pull up your newspapers, take a look, but it doesn't have to be that exact property. It can be something just down the street, such as, oh, let's say an explosion where many people were working, or a fire. What's going to happen to all those spirits that lived in the blocks just away from that? They're going to come visiting. They're going to come looking for a place where they once lived. Some don't realize that they've passed on, and they feed on our energy. Your batteries, and I'm sure you know that, your batteries die on your
Oh yes.
cameras, your telephones, your testing equipment, everything that you have, they'll take the energy from it when you're trying to explore and investigate. And that can be frightening. Um,
What's fascinating, if you don't mind me adding to that
mhm.
statement, what I've had a lot of deep conversations with parapsychologist Dr. Barry Taff,
Yes,
and
yes.
in his book, I recommend his book and your and Kathy's book too. That's two of the best books I've read on in these subjects. Period. But one thing that an interesting point that he brought out, and this coincides with things I've seen personally and experienced and investigated and
Hmm.
researched. Um, there's some sort of energy gathering process that does not produce heat. Now,
Yes.
this is where am having a horrible time wrapping my head around. So,
Hmm.
second law of thermodynamics: when energy is released, heat produces, correct?
Correct.
So, in a paranormal situation like telekinesis or a poltergeist of some sort, instead of you would think that if something got knocked from a table into next Tuesday with nothing actually physically hitting it,
Hmm.
you would think that it would produce a ton of heat. It'd probably burn up the table,
Hmm.
but instead it gets bone chilling cold.
It does.
Do you have any
It does.
thoughts on that?
Just a guess. I'm just a layperson, but from what I've experienced myself, when they take our energy, it's because they don't have any, and they keep sucking it from everything that we have, and just remaining ice cold. They don't have any heat or substance themselves. It's very difficult for a spirit to manifest. I've learned that. It takes a tremendous amount of energy, and hence the cold spot can be shape of a person bent over, a little animal. You can feel it. I'm sure you have in a lot of instances, and they're sucking energy. They cannot warm up. Doesn't mean they're bad. They're just on a different plane now, and they may be in an area where you wouldn't say it's too hot or too cold. It's just something that's there. If you talk to someone that's had a past life experience, they describe it as I'm a part of this thing, this place and time, and I don't need my eyes anymore to be on one side of my head. I can see 360. And if I go to look at who I was, I can see a shape forming, but I don't have a look. I don't have my personal look. I'm a part of it all. So as soon as I let loose of trying to concentrate on what I look like, it all goes back to a part of the whole.
Wow.
Um,
That's fascinating. And I've heard of that
uh-huh.
from other people, like my guest Howard Storm from episode number 2. The guy who was on that Unsolved Mystery show.
Mm-hmm.
He told me that the first thing he noticed when he got up out of his hospital bed, before he
Mm-hmm.
realized anything was wrong,
Mm-hmm.
he's like, "Wow, I can see much better." He's like, "Wow," you
Uh-huh.
know.
Yes, absolutely. And people who are dying and they don't realize it yet can have odd experiences. I had a friend have her husband call me. He was dying, didn't know it, and he woke up one night. He thought, and his feet were on the floor, but he couldn't feel them.
Wow.
He thought, okay, I'm going to get up and go and find my wife. He got up. He walked down the hall, never felt the floor, had no sensations of any kind except he was cold. And he walked towards his wife. The further he got towards his wife, the more he felt he was fading. He didn't realize he was out of his body. He'd had a lack of oxygen and he had just gotten right up, sat up on the bed, complete, and then his body left. He walked down the hall. He made it across the house and knew he had to turn around, went back. Body was sitting on the bed. He sat down and re entered his body, and he was terrified of that
I can only
experience.
imagine. Bless
Y-
his heart.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. So, explaining a little bit about the afterlife and what to look for and how to go to a much better place, it soothed him. It soothed him. So,
Wow.
yeah.
So those who I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Howard.
Okay.
Those of us who are afraid of death, in your own words, what would you tell them?
First words, you need to get their attention, but I say there's nothing to be afraid of. It's amazing. I have been there, a near death experience. I was very ill, and on my way to have major exploratory surgery, I was wide awake when I left. And I saw that tunnel and I saw that place, and I was made to come back. And if you go there, you don't want to come back to
Mm.
this place. There's so much more there. Don't ever be afraid. Look forward to what's waiting for you. Yeah.
That is one of the most riveting and touching things I've heard in some time. Thank you for
Oh,
sharing that
thank
with me.
you.
Um, there's all these things that go through your mind that sometimes, are we going to see our loved ones over there? Are we going to know our loved
Yes.
ones? There's all these incredible,
Oh,
meaningful
yes.
questions that mankind has asked for thousands of years.
Yes.
And it's so humbling to me and honorable to talk to people like you and to Howard, um, about this, because at the end of the day, I think this is one of the most important information that a human being can share who's had these
It
type of
is.
extraordinary experiences. um, I know that I have a family members had that type of experience,
Hmm.
and it changed him fundamentally.
It
uh,
does.
he went from being a devout atheist to being the most wonderful, loving, spiritual person you could imagine.
Hmm. No, people said I had changed drastically when I came out of surgery and came to, but I had been pushed. Well, first of all, I found something out. People say you have to be unconscious, in a coma, etc., to leave your body. I made that decision while I was being wheeled down the hall, and I know how I did it. And that was the conscious mind to connect with my subconscious and make that decision, and off I went. I watched my body being wheeled into surgery.
Just like that, before
Just
you
like
even went under
that.
the knife.
Yes.
Wow.
So I watched and I thought, well, farewell, because I'm not going back in that body. I did. I thought that. And then I looked and I saw that tunnel that people see. and I saw people waiting at the end, and I started through, and a very deep male voice said, "Mm-mm, wait just a minute." And I said, Why? I want to, I want to go there." And this voice said, "You've got something else to do before you can come." And I still resisted. And whoever, I never saw anyone behind me, put their hands on my shoulder blades and pushed me away from the tunnel. And while I was holding onto the hospital wall with whatever I had for hands or whatever, I didn't look to see what I looked like at that point, but I did know that just inside that tunnel was that magical place where I could look. So I was tumbling right through the doors to surgery, and I went through my mouth, is how I entered. And I woke up, recovery, and I was fighting just the same as I was when I entered. It's like, let me out.
I can
Yeah,
imagine.
yeah. Oh,
There's
yeah.
so
What?
much there's so much bad news. It's just every day in this world there's just bad news, bad news. There's
True.
got I there's got to be something good out there. And
Oh,
this is
there
some
is.
great news that you're bringing to us. Thank
Yes.
you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. There is. Don't be afraid. No,
That's
it's so special. A place of learning, deep learning, of guidance, and lots of decisions to make that are all positive.
hey, you
Yeah.
can't beat that.
Nope.
Wow.
Nope.
That's a deal.
It's a deal. You know it. Yeah, that's
Now,
right.
what about people like Howard? Like whenever Howard Storm had, I want to kind of compare a little bit, if you don't mind, for just a moment.
Sure.
When Howard Storm had his experience, Howard was a man that ruled his friends and family kind of like a dictator, for
Mm-hmm.
lack of a better term. When he started his experience, he would have ended up in a very void in a void, and there
Uh,
were other people there who were similar minded.
mm-hmm.
Um, but he was actually given the opportunity to leave that place and change his life. Have you heard of other
Yeah.
instances where people were in for like their own hell, for lack of a better
Yeah.
term, and then they were able to be redeemed
Oh,
Calvinistically or whatever?
yes. Oh, yes. Yeah, that's a place that you have to choose and decide yourself out of. Um, Experienced a family member who was dying and fighting against it, and kept pointing up to the corner of the room, going, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And we said, "Who's there? Is your dad there? Mm-hmm. Your mom? Uh-huh. And who's the third person?" They flat did not want to say, because whoever it was, they weren't really happy to see. And I don't think it was because someone they had argued with. I think it was someone that was in one of those places and preparing to take him there. Um, and he fought right down to the wire. They would bring back his respiration, and then his heart would go, and they'd bring his heart back. And then the rest, it went on and on for hours before finally his body gave out. So I have a feeling he was going to have to make some choices. Um, and it's a learning process. If you had to control people and you had to do it in a cruel way, here you're going to have to undo some of the reasons for that before you can go and join the rest, the all
That
that
makes total
is.
sense.
Hmm.
That makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense. Thank you for sharing that information. That was very enlightening and touching and humbling to hear, and I appreciate it. I have to break it to you, Denise. I've had the pleasure over the course of Project Stargate. I've had these experience being able to talk to people like you that,
Hmm.
and I get this sense of feeling like I'm sitting here talking to an intellectual genius like Albert Einstein or Max Planck or
Oh.
someone who's just a
Hmm.
pioneer, and uh, you're no different. Uh, you're just like those people, and I have to tell you, I'm very I'd like to hear a little bit more about. Do you have any other cases that you're working on right now that you might be able to share a little bit about, or some that you've recently investigated in any of these paranormal research fields that you could share with us for a few minutes?
Sure. Um, Let me see.
Take your
I've got,
time.
yeah, it's all right. I've got some people coming at times, and they are interested to know whether they have to come back after this lifetime. They want to find out, have they had a past life? People don't believe in it necessarily, but some do. And so they're now asking, I want to know how I chose this lifetime. I have a need to know because I've remembered some of my past life or what I think is a past life. And I need more information on that. So that's a part of my research now is to help people who, and I've got one coming up that's going to be so fascinating. I'll tell you just a little bit, a hint. Um, this person is the kindest, most gentle man that you could think of. And he um, had become consumed when watching TV, and it had to do. I hope that doesn't bother you.
Oh no, not at all.
That's all right.
Not
And
at all.
he had become consumed with any television shows, movies that had to do with Hitler and the Nazis. He was consumed with their uniforms and anything to do with that. And if he put the TV on, whether or not he'd seen it 10 times, he had to watch it again. And his wife began to think something was wrong. So he told her, he said, I hate this. I don't like what's going on. I've got my life now, but I almost feel like I was a part of that. And I need to know what part and how because I need it out of this life. So this is coming up. I'm going to work with them and do some hypnosis and see exactly what's going on.
Wow.
He has what looks like a flesh wound in his upper chest. Just to the side, could have hit his heart if it was from back then. We can bring um, examples through birthmarks from a past life.
Wow.
And I think this man did. So I've been working with him prior to our hypnosis work we're going to do. I said, when you go to bed at night, I want you to put your hand over that wound and I want you to ask that you either forget this completely, move on with your life because he's just such a decent person now, completely turn around if in fact that was his past life, and to ask for healing of that wound. And he was awake night after night after night. He puts his hand over that. He says the protective prayer. He does what I asked him to do, and he's been sleeping. And that wound is fading, if in fact that's what it is.
That's miraculous. So what you're suggesting, more or less, is that maybe people who have possibly had some kind of past life experiences here on in our three dimensions,
Mm-hmm.
maybe possibly that sometimes some of these things, like if you got your arm hurt, for lack of a, just an example, that maybe some form of that, if it was like an emotionally charged situation, maybe
Mm-hmm.
that can kind of reflect a little bit in your next life. Is that kind of where you're getting at on this?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
It will show up as a birthmark. And there can be times of where it's painful. It might inflame if you're watching a movie that reminds you. If you are somewhere where there's like a deja vu, you feel like I've been here, done this, but I don't know why or where. I just don't like it here. Um, a place you would never choose to live or drive your car. You would like to avoid it, and you do every time that's possible. Stay off that street. A country, an area of our country that you would not travel to visit, and you don't know why. There's all kinds of signs and symptoms. Unexplained fear is a big one. An unexplained fear, something that just gives you terror. No reason for it, none. So those are just some examples of what I do to begin that process for someone.
Wow, that's
Hmm.
that's very interesting. We're at Project Stargate. We strive to I have some my own conclusions about certain things, but I tell you
Hmm.
what, this is something that's eye opening to me, and I'm starting to think there might be something to this,
Yeah.
no doubt.
Um, I've been studying it since I had a memory of my own, and that was going to a home in Denver just to visit it as a tour. It was turning 100 years old. And a woman walked into the room, and the dress she was wearing, I knew it was mine. I
Wow.
knew it was mine. And I had an opportunity to ask her where she got it. And she said, from a trunk in the attic. And I'm the great niece of the person who owned this home. Well, it was my home in a past life. I know it. Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
have memories of being? Have you had reoccurring dreams of being in
Yeah.
there, or is it just an overwhelming sense of deja vu when you were looking at that dress and being in that home?
And I kept having continued recall over a period of years. I had a fear of dying of a stroke because the reason I was in that hospital, I'd had two strokes. And I thought, oh, it's because you already had a stroke. It took me until just a few years ago, and I'm talking back in the 80s to just a few years ago here in the 2000s, to discover why she died. And she died alone in a hotel room in New York of a stroke due to a brain tumor.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I carried that fear over. Yeah.
Sometimes these fears just do they come out of nowhere, just where you're not really thinking about it,
Mhm.
all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, am I gonna have a stroke? Just out of nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
Wow.
that type of thing can happen. Or you feel, let's say you go somewhere up in the mountains on a picnic, and then you have this horrific sense of, if I stay here, I'm going to fall off a cliff. I'm going to run to the edge of this hill and I'm going to fall off. And it has nothing to do with this lifetime at all. It's a brief flash memory of what occurred.
Man, that's fascinating. That is so fascinating. Denise, for those of our listeners who are interested in following her work, what's the best avenue for that? As far, do you have a website that you where post any articles, or do you have someone? Do you contribute to like Rhine
I
Institute or any of these other
I
websites?
do. The one that I do contribute to, and it's quarterly, it's called JAR, JAR magazine. They can just look that up and see what it's all about. It's got abductions, ETs, UFOs, and I'm on a panel that writes on different topics quarterly. And they'll say, our subject this time is, are you interested? And then I'll write something on it, usually several pages. And so that's one thing I do. I had a website and it was hacked, took it down, and I don't have time to do that all over again. But my email, dmstoner, the number one at gmail.com.
Wow.
Yeah.
That I tell you what, this has been a absolute riveting such conversation, Denise. Um, at some point down the road, we're gonna have to have you back on sometime. I just want to tell you
Sure.
what a pleasure it's been talking to you, and I every time I talk to you, it's like no matter how bad of a day I've had, it's just like talking to you is like having a glass of warm milk, and I think our listeners will definitely agree. Um,
Well, thank you.
I can't thank you enough for being part of this program, and we're definitely going to have you back on sometime.
Be happy to come back. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this was the Experiencers with Denise Stoner. Um, Next Thursday, later this week, probably Thursday or Friday, we're going to have Stan Gordon, the Pennsylvania's paratrooper of the paranormal, on our program, and he's got another exciting uh, program for you to experience here coming up later this week, perhaps Thursday. Denise, thank you so much for being with me, and God bless you and your husband and your family. And
Thank you. Yours
uh,
too.
I look forward to let's stay in touch, and I look
Oh,
forward
sure.
to hearing more about your future endeavors with this, because this is very
Yeah.
interesting. I think this is important for mankind to look into, and I think you're one of the heroes that are doing it.
Thank you, sir. And I want to hear about what you're up to too.
Oh, definitely. We're
Okay.
going to stay in touch for sure.
Okay. All right.
This
Good.
is Project Stargate. I'm your host, Mark Brenner. Hope you enjoyed the program. Coming up next, Stan Gordon will be with us Thursday evening, the 26th. Stay tuned, and thank you for being with us. Have a blessed day, everyone.